This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. From the launch your online shop stage, all the way to the we just hit 1 million orders stage. No matter what stage you're in, Shopify's there to help you grow. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/special offer, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/special offer.
What does Colgate mean by live life to the brightest? Could it be a rich glass of red sipped inside a Parisian cafe on a snowy night when my gaze is met by a tall, mysterious... I mean, brushing is directed with Colgate Optic White Pro Series toothpaste gives you a visibly whiter smile in just 3 days, so you can live life to the brightest and finish that glass without worrying about teeth stains. Colgate Optic White. Find it at all major retailers.
As a general rule of thumb, most superhero movies from 2008 and onwards have been pretty good. Movies B.I.M, that's before Iron Man, however, not so much. However, can a clan of capeless crusading kids unshackled from the weight of an actual comic book line fly high? Find out as we attempt to prove to you that Zoom is not that bad. Welcome one and all to It's Not That Bad, the podcast that looks for A grades in B movies and a member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. Now, you guys know that I like superhero films. I like them a lot, and they don't necessarily have to be from the Marvel or the DC line. I don't judge. You know, if there's a superhero involved, I'm good, I'm okay. But then there's some films that like to test my patience. And we're talking about one of those today because we're talking about 2006's Zoom. And here to join me for the show to go down this road from AM 640 Toronto, Lal Rabashaw is back. Lal, welcome back to the show. How you doing, man?
Always happy to be back, Jason, especially when it's my turn to torture you and send you down the rabbit hole for a bad movie for a change.
See, now, dear listeners, let me explain. So we were talking about this the night before recording this episode, and Lyle's like, yeah, Dungeon Siege, bitch. Now it's my turn. I'm like, yep. I take full ownership of that one. I apologize not to actually enjoy that film. But you're the one who brought Zoom to the table. So what is it about this film that made you actually want to attempt to defend it?
See, the reason I forgot about this movie completely, this is one of those movies that came out when I was like the target age group for it. 2006, I would have been 11 years old. So I vividly remember going to see this in theaters and thinking it was the coolest thing in the world. And then, very crucial to the story, I didn't see it again until I watched it for this episode. So I got to see it with the freshest eyes possible after watching it into oblivion for probably like the year it came out on VHS, and then completely forgot about it until I was looking for superhero recommendations for the show. And I was like, I loved this movie. Why does it have such a low score on all of the Rotten Tomatoes? And then watching it again, I quickly found out why.
Yeah, see, this is exactly the same thing that happened to me when we covered Krull on this show. I freaking loved Krull as a kid. I watched the crap out of Krull. I wanted to have the glaive. I was drawing pictures of the glaive because it was the coolest weapon from any movie in the 80s. And then you watch it as an adult with a podcast that looks at poorly rated films and you wonder what they put in your cereal as a kid. But this was actually a first watch for me. I had never actually watched this film at all. Maybe mentally I was just trying to avoid it. But so this is, I mean, you are a connoisseur of Zoom, at least from an early age. This is a first watch for me. So we're going to get very different, I think, opinions on this film.
Probably, yes. Even though obviously the opinion of 11-year-old Lyle, while in some cases is the same as adult Lyle, actually, I haven't grown up as much as I probably should have. But I think my opinion then on this movie and my opinion now might be a little different.
All right. Well, before we spoil too much, it is time to take this superhero film and trailerize it.
Long ago, a group of superheroes worked together to fight crime and save the day. Until the government decided they weren't good enough, pumped them full of super steroids, and watched as one of them raged out, killing almost everyone and ending up in some weird other dimension. Now, on the precipice of the return of the good guy gone bad, the government is putting a new team together. But instead of their totally not a Hulk reference gamma juice, this time they're going to train a new batch of super kids with sarcasm and isolation. Yeah, that'll work. Tim Allen stars in a film that's less an introduction to a new group of superpowered kids and more an introduction to Smash Mouth. It's Zoom, rated PG, for probably gonna call up a different superhero group to save the day.
You know you're in for a good time when one of the credits at the beginning of the film is songs by Smash Mouth.
Yeah, honestly, on the rewatch, one of the best parts of this movie is the fact that I can at least jam out to some Shrek music and like be reminded of the good times a little bit in that respect.
Yeah, Shrek Rock is a thing. It's a category of just Smash Mouth. But, and I will give this right now. The soundtrack on this film is phenomenal.
It's better than it has any right to be, quite honestly. Like, it really is. Like, that's one of the takeaways I had upon this rewatch is, wow, this soundtrack goes really hard. What song did they cover during the dance? They cover an 80s song during one of the montages, and I was immediately blown away.
Well, I mean, you've got the middle from Jimmy Eat World in this, which, you know, I hear it's a good song. I may play that one live. But I have an issue with this soundtrack because there's a song on here that should not exist. Smash Mouth covers Under Pressure by Queen.
See, I loved it. I loved that though. I think it was I for some reason that tickled the right parts of my brain for me. I thought it was amazing.
You need brain surgery if it's tickling your brain at that point. No. I'm not sitting here trying to bash Smash Mouth here, but there are some songs that should not be covered. Under Pressure, I think, is one of them. And I'm looking at you, frickin' Vanilla Ice. Looking at you.
No, he's got that famous interview where he very scientifically breaks down how the dun-dun-dun-dun-dun is different on his.
That is the most iconic, I think, 90s interview clip ever. And it's like,
yeah,
you almost want to like pause the tape and sit there and go back in time and go, say that again.
Yeah.
And just listen to yourself as you're making the noises with your mouth.
Is that what the lawyer said in court is what my question is? Did they get up in front of the bench and was like, no, I promise, sir, it's dun, 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 dun.
Yeah. I mean, let's be honest. Queen did just, sell the rights to their songs for like $1 billion. So yeah. Vanilla Ice ain't paying that.
Yeah. I don't think anyone's going to have any of the rights to those for a while. A lot of bands doing that now. You see that in the news a lot, that a lot of the famous older acts, especially ones that have either passed away or their rights are now held by constituents instead of the actual people. Crazy numbers, crazy high numbers.
Well, I mean, that's the thing too. You do have some acts that have like a deep legacy catalog that just works so well for television and film and commercials.
And ads, yeah, that's something. And when the Queen stuff got sold, I was just like, every commercial is gonna have Freddie Mercury's voice on it now. Like,
yeah, pretty much. Which, if it means I get to hear more Queen, then I get to hear more Queen. But before we diatribe too much on this, by the way, I will say there's going to come a day when someone's going to buy the Smash Mouth, song catalog, and it will be in every commercial, and I'll be okay with that.
Yeah, I think Smash Mouth is one of the more underrated bands of their time. I think they're getting a little bit more attention now, especially because of the unfortunate passing of the band members, which is coming through. But I was just having this discussion with a friend of mine the other day to go off on a side tangent about Shrek. I think Shrek is one of the most generational movies now. Like, I think it's become Disney classic-esque. Like, it's become one of those movies that a lot of people, especially my age, people that are hitting 30 soon, like a lot of us are like, no, like that movie is made of gold. It's the Holy Grail. And it's a lot because of the soundtrack. Like, that plays a big part. I wish it did more to help this movie, though.
I will take a Smash Mouth soundtrack over a Randy Newman soundtrack any freaking day.
Yeah, absolutely. I will too. And Randy Newman's also great.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
But anyways, we're going to talk about Zoom here. So let's talk about who is in this film. The movie stars Tim Allen, Courtney Cox, Chevy Chase, Rip Torn, Spencer Breslin, Kate Mara, Michael Cassidy, Ryan Newman, and Kevin Zegers. It is directed by Peter Hewitt, and if you're not familiar with his work, you might actually be, because he also directed Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey and Garfield the movie, not the animated one that just came out. We're talking about the one with Jennifer Love Hewitt. Apparently, Tim Allen helped write one of the first versions of the script, and he said in an interview that the script was a much darker tale than what ended up on screen, which would explain a lot.
Yes.
Especially at the box office. Now, according to IMDb.com, this film had a budget of $35 million, but according to Wikipedia.com, it has a budget of $75 million. So we're not quite sure what the right number is, but it still lost money either way, because at the box office, it only had a worldwide gross of $12 million. When it debuted on the August 11th, 2006 weekend, it debuted at number 9. With only $4.5 million. The highest grossing film that week was the second week run of Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby, with $22 million. The highest grossing debut was Step Up with $20.6 million in second place. World Trade Center debuted at number 3 with $18.7 million, and Pulse debuted at number 5 with $8.2 million. So, I mean, it's not a bad week at the box office, but Zoom kind of fell a little flat.
Some stiff competition there, very stiff competition, including one of my favorite comedies of all time, a little bit of Shake and Bake, Talladega Nights. That'll never be on. It's not that bad because it is a classic.
There were actually some awards for this film, both good and bad. At the 2007 Young Artist Awards, Ryan Newman was nominated for Best Performance in a Feature Film by a young actress aged 10 years or younger, lost to Abigail Breslin. But then there's the downside to this. At the 2007 Razzies, Tim Allen was nominated for Worst Actor for this, The Santa Claus 3, The Escape Clause, and The Shaggy Dog, and lost to Marlon and Shawn Wayans for Little Man. And at the 2006 awards, let's get through the nominations first, because, well, you're somewhat familiar with some of these films. It was nominated for Least Special Effects, lost to Blood Rain.
Yeah, I liked Blood Rain. I can't say anything bad about Blood Rain. I think that was one of my higher ones on the grading on a curve.
Nominated for Worst Ensemble, lost to Blood Rain. Nominated for Worst Picture, lost to Blood Rain. Can you tell which film dominated the Stinkers Bad Movie Awards that year? Also, it was nominated for Most Intrusive Musical Score, lost to Find Me Guilty. It was nominated for Worst Screenplay, lost to Date Movie. And Courtney Cox was nominated for Worst Supporting Actress, lost to Cindy Chung for Lady in the Water. But it won 4 awards at the Stinkers Bad Movie Awards that year. It won for Foulest Family Film. Tim Allen won Worst Actor for this, The Santa Claus 3, and The Shaggy Dog. Chevy Chase won for Worst Supporting Actor for this and Dougal. And here's the award I hate to mention, because I don't think it's right to critique child actors, especially at a young age. But the so-named Spencer Breslin Award for Worst Performance by a Child went to Spencer Breslin for this, The Santa Claus 3, and The Shaggy Dog. I do not like the idea of putting kids into a worst actor category.
I was just thinking that. I don't think there should be a child actor category in any Razzie or Stinker situation. They're kids. They're learning their chops.
But the reason why we are here, and not because this is clearly one of Lyle's favorite films, are the critics. Over at Metacritic, the film has a Metascore of 26. And over at Rotten Tomatoes, the audience score is 33%. The tomatometer, 4%. But, dear listeners, we're going to start a new thing here on this show.
Ooh.
Because we want to give you the overall feel for this. So let me go through those numbers again. And let me add a few numbers for you. At Metacritic, Metascore of 26. Tomatometer of 4%. Audience score 33%. Over at Letterboxd, it has a 2.1 star rating, which is equivalent to a 42% score. And at the movie database, it has a 53% score there, giving it what we would like to call here for the first time ever, the aggravated aggregate of 31.6. So that gives you a bit of a wider view on this film, sitting at a 31.6%.
I love the aggravated aggregate. I love that's amazing. That's awesome.
So yeah, we're going to be doing that a lot more here. Trust me, we got some more fun stuff coming up. But keep in mind, we will now be doing the aggravated aggregate. We're still going to use Rotten Tomatoes, the tomatometer, as kind of like our starting point. But we will give you the aggravated aggregate to give you a broader view, because sometimes the critics suck.
And sometimes those numbers do represent a good swath of it too, because I think even on the rewatch nowadays, being a more fickle individual as we all get with age, the childlike wonder is gone, and I realize that Tim Allen cannot do no wrong, even though he's Buzz Lightyear. Seeing it now, a 50% seems pretty efficient to me. That seems like the number. So to hear that I'm not crazy, and some actual professional movie sites agree that this is not like a complete F failing grade, I'm glad that I'm not the only one.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. And that's why we're going to start to do the aggravated aggregate here, is that, I also say that 5 times fast, but the thing is, the tomatometer is usually extraordinarily harsh. And sometimes you have to take a look at the averages to get the true score of this. So we are going on the assumption that this has a 31.6% aggravated aggregate. And now it's time to find out why with the breakdown. We start, of course, with Tim Allen, who is Jack Shephard / Zoom. So Lyle, you mentioned he can do wrong. So how was Tim Allen for you?
Upon the rewatch, Tim Allen is actually, I think, the weakest part of this, and part of the reason why a lot of it starts to fall apart later on. Not just because he plays the exact same character he plays in most anything, which is aggravated old has-been of something that is now jaded to the world and has to be reconvinced to find wonder and childlike fantasy again. But it's all the character is written so badly. Like, it's like almost into the third act of the movie, and he still basically has this same like nonchalant, I'm here for the money, I don't care attitude. Like, it's seeing him play off the kids is probably the best part, because you can tell that when he's sharing the room with the girl and the oldest guy as well, Houdini, that's when you can tell he's having the most fun with it. But there are times where he's like phoning it in through 2 tin cans attached with a string. Like, it's bad.
Yeah. I mean, I understand how a film can change from first initial script to whatever, makes it through the studio and gets out to the theaters. Because, of course, if you're going to make a family film, you don't want it to be too harsh. You don't want it to be cruel. And that's the thing. If this script was originally darker and then the studio said, nah, we're gonna make it a family film, we're gonna tweak things here and there. But the problem is that Zoom is the only character who really feels that kind of sarcasm. Like, there's no other balancing board there. There's no one left from the team, except for Concussion. By the way, this film is almost 20 years old. So we're going to spoil it for you a little bit. So go find it. Go watch it. It is out there. I actually borrowed it off of Canopy to go and watch it. And if you have a library card, you can get Canopy. So there's that. But the thing is, it's a family freaking film. And if the main character of your film, and I'll get to that a little bit later, if the main character of your film is snarky and sarcastic and just unlikable, then your movie's going to end up the kind of the same way.
Yeah, especially the way he interacts with Courtney Cox's character sometimes is really sign of the times. Like there's some stuff there that I'm just like, oh, it's a very heavy eye roll. And to go back to the darker script, it's the exact same as a couple of the episodes I've done on this show, because the story seems to be the same with a lot of failed superhero movies. Man, they had everything there, and they had some good story elements. I love the old team. I like all their names. Their power sets are cool. I like how they're very much like referencing a bunch of actual comic book stuff without saying names, besides the one time where they're like, he's faster than the Flash and Superman and all that. But I love the brother is like cast out. You know, he killed the two members of the team, and then they couldn't kill him. They just had to basically send him away. The government experimenting on new kids because they fear he's like, the story is really good on paper if you give like the elevator pitch. It's when you get into the details is when stuff starts to fall apart.
Yeah. It's basically like if you took the recent Netflix film, We Could Be Heroes, but had them trained by Hancock. That's kind of basically how this comes across.
Very much so. Very much so.
But the thing is, you cannot take a film like We Could Be Heroes and smash bang it with Hancock, because those are two diametrically opposed on a tonal basis kind of film, even though they're both in the superhero genre. One is a very family friendly, designed for kids kind of film, and one is freaking Hancock. Like it's not for kids at all.
Not at all. Not at all. But I think they could have done a lot better. I think this movie would have increased tenfold if it was PG-13.
Mm-hmm.
Because you've seen this kind of thing done to a better degree with Sky High. Like it feels like this was trying to do what Sky High was trying to do, pay homage while at the same time making your own original thing. I think this would have done, if you would have made this PG-13 and kept some of those darker elements, same cast, same most everything except for I think the writing was in a box because it was supposed to be a kid's movie. So they had to kind of tone and dumb down some of the darker elements, because there are plot points in this movie that do not make any sense. And you can tell it's where there probably should have been some darker material in, like we said, spoiler warning. But the fact that at the crux of all this, he just immediately, within 10 minutes of defeating Concussion, everybody's shaking hands and welcoming him to the team. He murdered Tim Allen's girlfriend and other teammate, and it's just all water under the bridge, dude. Government doesn't care. Nobody cares. Welcome back. Here's the keys to the UFO. Like, cue Smash Mouth. Let's go. Let's get some pizza. Like, what is happening?
Yeah, no. This film feels, I don't want to say bipolar, but it kind of feels that way.
Yes.
Because and that's the thing too, going from scene to scene, you get crotchety Tim Allen and then like goofy Tim Allen in back-to-back scenes, and they switch back and forth, and it's like, what is wrong with you? Like, what is wrong with the film? It feels almost as Frankenstein patchwork as the Suicide Squad. Not the Suicide Squad, but Suicide Squad, the first one.
Very much so. And then on that same vein, it's not even just with Tim Allen's character, Zoom. You go from one scene of like Chevy Chase getting whipped across the room by the super strong 6-year-old, everybody having a laugh while he cried. And then the very next scene is the general of the military looking at a giant ray gun while they're basically talking about experimenting on children. Now it's probably going to kill them. So it's just like, you know, pick a lane and stay in it. And if you pick the right one, this probably could have been really good, which is, I think, why I do still like hold a little place in my heart, because the building blocks are there. They're not built into a stable structure at all.
The other thing too is that you're not even beholden to a comic book line, so you can do whatever you want with this character.
Whatever you want.
The carte blanche. And there are films that have done this. James Gunn wrote one in 2000 called The Specials that starred Rob Lowe, and it's a good film.
Really
and
good.
That's not handcuffed by the original script material. But if you're going to make a family film, make a family film. And if you're going to make a darker film, make a darker film. But do not, it's like Ghostbusters. Don't cross the streams.
No, because then you get this, which feels like Super Babies, Baby Geniuses 2 with a little bit more production value, which is what I compared this to a couple times when watching it.
The other thing too, and I'm going to take a deep breath before I say this, okay? We're all, I think, on the same plane that this is definitely a family-friendly film.
Yes.
It's made for kids, okay? Tim Allen should not be the central focus of the film in a family film. It should be about the kids.
Exactly. I 100, and they veered into it a couple of times. There were a couple of times in the movie, and I think some of the best points of it were when they were just focusing on the kids. The training segments and the stuff with that whole last class dance that they did that was kind of like prom-esque. And even the very, very cult paint by numbers, it was written by a monkey with a typewriter romance story between the two. Like the first thing he says to her is, "No, we're destiny. We're the two leaders of the team are supposed to be together." And then they do. But though I think the best parts about it were where they were ignoring Tim Allen a little bit and focusing on these kids, because there is a lot of cool, interesting questions with that. Like, yeah, their parents sent them away as soon as the government came to their door because they were incredibly different. And are they special? Like the little girls, am I different story? That's good. That's one of the good little cherries that this has. And the girl acts it great. Like, talks as if like that is a kid in that situation when she pulls the bed up to the side of Tim Allen's bed, rips it right off the wall. That's a great scene because it's the kid.
Yeah. I mean, there are parts of this film that are quite good. And the thing is, I don't think, superhero films should be the template, or at least the launching point. This film needed to go back to the 80s to take a look at the films that leaned heavily on the kids' actions. Films like The Goonies, films like Stand By Me, or the one that kept on coming to mind with this was Space Camp with a young Leah Thompson. That focused on the kids partaking in the space program. And when they were launched into space, they were the ones that was on the focus. And you had the space in the film to develop every single character on the team. It was a good film. I freaking love Space Camp. And when we covered it on the show, I gushed because it was a good film. That needed to be the template for where the focus was.
No, and I completely agree. There was so much here that could have gone correctly, but instead they really just basically took one of the kids and turned them into a fart joke, like Mega Boy. That's all he is. He's just a joke about overeating and like being able to inflate. I think you could have had so much good coming, because he's a great actor as well. Cat in the Hat is a movie from my childhood as well. I loved him in that. So I think he definitely had the chops to do something deeper with it, and he just kind of got put into the poop joke category a little bit. But yeah, that's definitely where they veered off track. It shouldn't have been as much about Zoom. Zoom shouldn't have been as much about Zoom.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised that they went down the scatological sense of humor, because one of the films directed by Peter Hewitt before making this film was a movie called, and I'm not even you on the title, Thunderpants. And it is exactly what you think it is.
I've seen Thunderpants.
Mm-hmm. I mean, between Spencer Breslin's character, Mega Boy, and of course you had Jupiter, the gas giant, during the
I thought about that.
The intro scene. I'm like, oh, yeah.
And the snot bubble as well in that same scene.
Yeah. So clearly this is just one big series of, excrement jokes.
Toilet humor.
Exactly.
My least favorite kind of humor.
Courtney Cox, who played Dr. Marsha Holloway. Here's someone who understood that it was a family film, but your thoughts on her?
Oh man. One of the best parts of the movie. I love Courtney Cox. I think she's incredible in most of the things that she's in. But here, like you said, she was the one that understood where she was, I think, and played the role great. Not just in the sense that she acted more for a kid's movie, but in the sense that she was one of the few good parts about Tim Allen's character, was him kind of bouncing off her and her expecting to ride in on the white horse and be like the superhero. He's going to teach them all and it's going to be great. And her finding out that essentially he is like this washed up a-hole, and how to deal with that in her own mind. And she's another one of the big plot points I like about this movie. They explain comic books as if they're government propaganda. So in this universe, like Superman and all those heroes do exist, they're fictional. But there was also comic books written about the real, like, non-fiction superheroes in that universe, Zoom and Marksman and his team. But they were created by the government, and none of those adventures ever happened. They were propaganda to make the team look good. And he has to explain that to her at one point. I'm like, that's a really good in-universe way to explain why there's comic books and the heroes at the same time.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, Dr. Marsha Holloway makes total sense, because I mean, we're not going to get into all the spoilers for her character, but I mean, she is right on Team Zenith. She is a believer in, because obviously superheroes existed. There had to be newspaper and television evidence that superheroes existed, and then they went away. But these comics that were out there where it's like, okay, cool, well, we can put two and two together and recognize that these are based off of the real people, even though the adventures in them are, as you say, government propaganda. But that's got to be fascinating. Like, honestly, you think about your favorite comic book, and if you sat there and said, I know for a fact that this person existed at one point in time, that's going to be really exciting, especially when you realize you are who you are. I'm really trying hard not to give away the whole the twist on Dr. Holloway here, but her enthusiasm makes sense, and I like it's a good counterpoint to the grumpiness of Zoom. But the problem with Tim Allen's character is that it goes from grumpy to almost, like I said, almost cruel in the sarcasm.
Yeah. Very, especially to her. That's the one. There was a lot of derogatory to women jokes coming from Tim Allen in this, especially at the beginning when he first meets Courtney Cox's character. The next time he just keeps she's trying to like gush about him and like ask what his life has been like and all that. And he just keeps asking her if she still has the green dress that he wore the first time that he saw her. And there was, just very, very weird humor. I did not like the Zoom character at all on this on this watch of it.
They really made Zoom unlikable.
Yeah, and I think that's what they were going for, I think, at one point in the movie. So they were bang on, but unfortunately they just didn't do enough to turn us around by the end like we were supposed to, because we'll get to it. But everything gets wrapped up in a bow within 5 minutes after not much happening for 2/3 of the movie.
Yeah.
And that you were expected to basically forgive a lot in a very short amount of time for some characters.
I mean, here's the thing. If the plot went, and this is not the way the plot goes, so I'm not spoiling anything on this, but if the plot went, heroes are being trained, Zoom's not exactly the greatest trainer, but still kind of connects to the kids, because at one point he was one of those kids, during his time. And then Concussion comes back and the two of them fight and he sacrifices himself to save the kids and Zoom dies, and the kids eventually defeat Concussion and become the next Team Zenith. Okay, cool, no problem. Then Zoom's sacrifice means we don't have to accept Zoom. We only have to accept his sacrifice to not have the kids go through the same suffering that he did. Okay, that makes sense. I can get behind losing an asshole character in a sense, a last sense of self-sacrifice, a hero one last time. No, we don't get that. And the thing is, at times, Jack and Marsha they play well off each other, and I think they counterbalance well. But the thing is, Dr. Holloway is too nice, and Zoom is too not.
Yes, which is why my rewrite for this movie is even darker than that. I think my rewrite for this movie is that when Concussion comes back, Zoom thinks he's right.
Oh God.
And I think the ending to this movie should have been they go to fight Concussion, and in the fight, he basically can, they're about to do the exact same thing to these kids that they did to us. They killed, two of us ended up dying because of this, because it's loosely explained that he killed them because of gamma radiation reasons, which is like a Hulk defense, first of all. And second of all, it doesn't work like that, which is what I said a lot during this movie. It doesn't work like that. Super speed doesn't work like that. Can't just move your finger really fast, but I don't know how to move my feet like this. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean? But my dark rewrite for it was Zoom joins Concussion, and the kids have to defeat them both, and they do. And both of them end up going to jail, and Zoom does not get the $500,000.
But then that definitely would not be a family-friendly film.
I think if it ends the right way, I think it does, because, like you said, you had this such a fast-moving plot, and he didn't get on the kid's side even until so late in it. I think you could have easily had him teeter on the side of good. His baby, his brother, shows up after being presumed dead for 30 years. And the brother talks him into it, even if it's just for that one moment of him going, no, kids, we don't got to kill anybody, but also I'm not taking the government side here. We're running away with him. And the kids are just no, he's a criminal. He's got to go, because he killed two people, which everyone seems to forget by the end of this movie. the kids are like, no, it's because they talk about justice so much, and like that's what heroes do. They protect justice. So I think it'd be great if if either Courtney Cox or one of the kids did a justice speech, and then they're like, if you're gonna join up with him, we're taking you both in, and that's how it ends, with both of the brothers in jail, playfully arguing about who got them there, kind of thing.
Chevy Chase is Dr. Ed Grant in very, very much the most Chevy Chase of Chevy Chase roles.
He was full Chevy Chase.
Like, sometimes you sit there and you read a script, like, and this happens with Christopher Walken a lot, right? I start to wonder if scripts are written specifically for Christopher Walken because writers hear Christopher Walken's voice in their heads. Like, The Rundown was such a Christopher Walken role.
There's no way it didn't happen in Batman Returns.
Right.
There's no way that Tim Burton wasn't sitting there going, I know exactly who's going to play this weirdo.
This feels very much like they took a look at old Chevy Chase films and basically copy and pasted the personality to Dr. Grant. But the thing is, Chevy Chase's version of comedy, like you take a look at Fletch, you take a look at the vacation films, it's almost perfect for a film like this because it is a very inoffensive, subtle, and lets the crazy happen around him kind of comedy.
And it's when that kind of character doesn't seem as out of place, because that's the thing with the vacation films and everything else is like everybody else is normal, but Clark is insane.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know what I mean? But here it works because everybody's kind of on that cartoony level. Everybody is at like the very, like we said, kids movie. So the zaniness, we'll call it, is turned up a bit. So he fits really well. I do think his character was really good.
Yeah.
And my stomach flesh is burning is one of the best quotes of the movie.
That's the thing. Chevy Chase had some good lines in it just enough. And they did not make Dr. Grant basically on the side of, the gamma radiating the kids. He was very much still the, run the program, help his old friend Zoom, like Dr.
He was neutral good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, he's not Rip Torn in this. Who plays General Larrabee?
Yeah.
Your thoughts on Rip Torn?
Like I said, this is one of, I think, the darker elements that probably got snipped off that I think could have been great. Because he's the stereotypical cookie cutter, secret government bad guy, willing to do whatever it takes to save millions of lives, needs of the many over the needs of the few. A lot of Hulk references. He's basically just Thunderbolt Ross. Like he really is. If you've read the comics and you're familiar with that from the Hulk comics, the Red Hulk he turns into eventually, even down to the hat and like the whole look of him. He's very, very Thunderbolt Ross, but it's serviceable. He's a superhero villain kind of thing. But again, doesn't really get his just desserts at the end because absolutely zero comeuppance for him, no consequences. It's never really talked about. Like at no point the kids didn't turn around at the end and you were going to blast us with the same thing that made them crazy. Like it just a lot of loose plot threads with him at the center of it, but I think he played it amicably well for what it was.
I mean, the thing is this. We say it again, it's a family film.
Yeah.
Right? General Larrabee, as played by Rip Torn, fits well in a family film. He's basically parroting the same kind of performance he had in Men in Black, right?
Yeah.
And that works well on a family level because even in his most snarly performance in this, it's still Rip Torn. Like, it's just one of those things where it's like he was, it was so... He's on screen and you're pretty much ready for a laugh. That's the kind of Rip Torn character you're getting here. And
he's got those steely eyes. Like he really looks villainous. Like I think if there's ever a Street Fighter, he could be M. Bison, like kind of thing. Like he looks very evil. He looks like he's made for this kind of a role. But I just wish that there was more for him to do with it. Yeah. I do think it's really good in a kids movie too, that they are doing this. This is still kind of dark for a kids movie. That plot point of him, his entire reason is basically just like blast them with the radiation, like see what happens. Like maybe they'll get more powerful. And if they die, they die. I think it's interesting that is still in a movie that is very much made for kids. And good message, kid. Don't trust them. Don't trust Big Brother. We don't know what they're doing up there. So
I think the other thing too with Rip Torn is that if they were going for a darker, more PG-13 film, you're not putting Rip Torn in that role. You're putting a Tommy Lee Jones in that role. You're putting a Sam Elliott in that role. You're putting someone with a little bit more, brittleness to the leather hide, if you will. Rip Torn is very much like your Disney Channel kind of villain. Your Nickelodeon live action TV show type villain, where even though he's saying these dastardly things, you sit there and go, "Oh, you're so cute. You're evil."
He should have been the one to play, not Patton Oswalt, even though I love him. He should have been the villain in that live action Kim Possible movie.
Right. Although that being said, you could have put Patton Oswalt in the role of General Larrabee.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
That would have been perfect.
Yeah, that's the kind of role you need. Rip Torn is great in this role. I think he was the perfect choice for it. Patton Oswalt would have been a good choice. No problems there because it's a family freaking film.
Follow me, Danny DeVito.
I could get behind Danny DeVito. I could absolutely get behind Danny DeVito in that kind of role. Like, that would work. Even, I hate to say it, a Christopher Walken would have worked in that role.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right? Christopher Walken could do anything.
Oh, absolutely. Let's talk about the kids. And we're going to start with Michael Cassidy, who played Dylan, the kid who can turn invisible. Your thoughts?
I think he's one of the highlights, honestly. I think he did a good job. You're thrust into a crazy position where you're the pseudo leader of a superhero team, but you're sharing the screen with Tim Allen. So I think he's like the pseudo lead because he's going to be the leader of the team, obviously. It's the same as with most of it. If the writing was better, it could have been great. Cool power to put on the leader of your team. You don't expect the leader of a superhero team's main thing to be invisibility. You expect it to be the thing the toddler got. So I do like the interesting power dynamic going on there. But I think he did good. I liked his character. I liked Dylan. The romance, while very, very easy, and you could see it coming from a world away, was good. I think most of the kids were good. I'm not going to complain about the kids very much.
I'm not going to complain about the kids' performances because you're right. The kids' performances were all quite good. I am going to complain about the lack of development of the characters in the script. Now, obviously, Dylan is kind of, if we're looking for a parallel here, this is supposed to be like the Judd Nelson character out of The Breakfast Club. But appropriately so, he's not as moody or as dark as Judd Nelson's character in The Breakfast Club. He is almost, again, very much like Space Camp, right? Like the male lead in that, who basically tries to fall for Leah Thompson, again, paralleling what's going on with him and Kate Mara's character, Summer Jones. But the thing is, his entire shtick is he just doesn't want to be there. And the problem is we don't see the interaction between him and Summer. So we don't really believe that he has that kind of, like, Summer should be the anchor that makes him want to be there and to be a part of this. And like, how did they know? Like, how did he know her before? Did they go to the same school? I think they did.
I think they did. It's implied that they did. And you also, about halfway through the movie, I started to kind of realize this. I think you only see him on screen with the toddler and Mega Boy like 3 times in total for long parts, like for longer scenes. But you actually don't see him in the room with the whole team together very much until the end, because most of the time they do pull the cord on him, and whenever they do a training exercise, he just dips. Yeah. And they call it Code Dylan, and they keep the the ongoing joke going, which I think is funny. But I agree. There's just, with all of them, it's the same problem. There's no development until the very end, and then we got to try to make up for lost time in the last like 10 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, even if we're drawing that whole Breakfast Club thing, that analogy, which would then make Kate Mara's character similar to the one played by Molly Ringwald in The Breakfast Club, is that we need to see the dynamics between the two, because really they both kind of are peas in a pod. He feels like he's almost invisible in school, which, it's a good analogy using that superpower for him, because he feels kind of invisible, whereas Summer Jones is kind of picked on by the pretty girls, the cheerleaders, and they call her a freak, even though that, we don't really know why they're calling her a freak, because just they're cheerleaders and they're mean girls or whatever. But by the way, have you seen Kate Mara? But still, regardless of, it's like her ability to, telepathic and telekinetic and technokinetic, which you have to think is one of her powers as well, because she's able to communicate with the spaceship. Develop the relationship. Have them actually stand up for each other, or at least Dylan stand up for Summer, or vice versa. Like, develop it a bit more, so when it does happen, you're like, oh.
Yeah, and on all levels, including physical, she's Jean Grey. That's basically the character. It's the exact same power set. She's got the red hair that, she could have been in one of the X-Men movies and no one would have batted an eye. And for a character whose entire thing is, when I touch people or if I'm close to people, I can see their deepest desires. Like, she makes the joke with Chevy Chase about, and you don't secretly dream about being an ice skater. And there's that little gag where he kind of looks at her and his eye twitches. You're telling me that you're going to have a teen romance thing and you're not going to bring that into play a single time, which they did not do. Like, she could have she knew he had a crush on her from the second that she saw him, theoretically, with her power set, right? Like, there could have been so many things you could have done. She could have gone into his head and brought out the feelings of feeling invisible and talked to him about it when no one else did. I'm making this up on the fly, and you had a 2-hour movie to do it, and you didn't do it once. That's what I mean. There's so many missed opportunities here with really good building blocks in place to use them.
Yeah. And again, as we said earlier, Tim Allen should not have been the focal point of the feature. You have great actors in these kids in good roles that just need to be developed. Like, Kate Mara is fantastic in this. Michael Cassidy is actually pretty good in this. I got no problem with that. The other thing too, I wanted to see Summer. You saw it a little bit, but we didn't really see her become kind of like the clan mom of the younger ones, of Tucker and Cindy. Because there were times where it felt like she had taken the kids under their wings. Like, she became Mama Bear to those two kids because, she's a little bit older. She's already kind of been through the program a little bit. She knows what these kids need, and what they need is someone who cares about them. Again, similar to what Dr. Holloway was doing. Let's see Summer be the Mama Bear to this team.
Yeah, let's see her kind of step into her own, or, I know I'm asking for a lot from this movie, because we've kind of, all of this that we've been talking about goes to character development, which there is none. The character that you meet at the beginning, the first time you see them, is the exact same person they are at the end of the movie.
Drop some of the training montages, drop some of the special effect goofiness, get rid of about, 75% of your poop jokes, and develop the kids starring in the family-friendly film. Bad script. Great everything else on paper. Spencer Breslin, who played Tucker Williams, Mega Boy. Script did him no favors.
Nothing. The script did the worst to him out of any of them. But he was the one that was hurt the worst by it.
But even worse, visual effects did this kid no favors. Like, the cannonball into the pool, okay, whatever, right? But when they're doing the superpower audition scene and his head expands, I'm like, I've had nightmares that look weirder than that. And he
had a really good role in the superhero team, because in a lot of superhero teams and comics, there's always the one character whose powers are situational at best. Not going to get you out of a jam. They're not super strong. They're he is very much a there's an X-Men called Flesh, where his only power is that he can turn himself translucent. He's one of those. He can inflate different parts of his body, and he does not have control over it. And most of it is just jokes about him filling up the room or getting mad and puffing himself up. Even in the final battle, he has a minuscule part of it. He feels like the most shoehorned in of all of the kids.
Yeah, when you take a look at some comic book characters and you sit there and go, oh my God, you're actually a comic book character. Someone like Arm Fall Off Boy.
Yes.
Seriously. Also, the fact that Arm Fall Off Boy did make it into the Suicide Squad, so yay for that.
There's also Ignition, who's an 11-year-old boy whose only power is that he's going to explode and kill himself and anybody close to him at that point. At some point, he can only do it once, and no one knows when it's going to be. Maybe the most useless power ever. He's still written better in X Factor than this kid was in this movie.
Yeah. I mean, there are some really out there superhero characters with some very, like you say, situational superpowers. Mega Boy is definitely that. But the problem, though, is this. A, the fat suit that he had to wear during this whole thing looked worse than some super mall Santa Clauses around Christmas who were just stuck in a pillow inside the coat. The screen time used to develop, like, he feels like an hour and a half fat boy joke.
Yeah, he's basically, and it's the entire character arc of him is that he's making fun of fat kids. Which, like, whatever, like, some of the jokes can be funny, but every single minute of his screen time is devoted specifically to that. And him eating a bunch, like the fact that he has to eat a lot because of his powers, I guess. Like, it doesn't ever explain it, but he has 6 Frosties from the most obvious product placement I've maybe ever seen in a movie, and that's hard. There's a lot of them, but, like, they just roll up into a Wendy's drive-thru in a UFO at one point, and that, while funny visuals, it's like, you didn't have to have him wear the fat suit. If his whole thing is he has to eat a lot because of his powers, and his power is that he can inflate, what is the legitimate purpose of the fat suit?
Right?
Like, his power is that he can inflate. Just make that why he has to eat a whole bunch. You can still make the fat kid jokes because he puffs up as a power, like he becomes massive. But why do you have to make him also be a fat kid to do that? Like, you can make that work without having to do it. And of all the characters that have the high metabolism, I'm getting into a nerd rant now, but the super speeders always have the high metabolism. The people that have super speed have to burn more calories. So that's why the Flash has to eat like an insane amount of food, but Tim Allen doesn't, but the kid does. Like, there's just things that it doesn't work like that. Like I said, I found myself looking at the screen so many times and going, that's not how that works. Like, it's not real, but it's also not how that works. Like,
and the thing is, a character like that, a character like Tucker, you have to think would have some kind of complex about their powers. Like, oh, hey, people are keeping making, chubby jokes about me and my entire power is getting chubbier. Like, I don't know about you, but if that was me, I'd have a freaking complex about the whole thing. I wouldn't want anything to do with it.
And that's the thing. And he's the one that has the least mental issues out of all of them.
Yeah.
He's the one that just seems to be having a pretty chill time most of the time. Like, which just, it doesn't make any sense at all. And like I said, there's so many plot points you could go down with that. Like you said, he's a big kid who gets made fun of for being a big kid, and his power is that he gets bigger. Like, so immediately you could have him be afraid of the powers or not want to use them because he's afraid he's going to be like this forever. Like, and I know what that feels like. Like, as a big kid myself, I was the fat kid, still am, but I'm not upset about it. But at the same time, it's like, there is a point where you're like, okay, this has got to stop. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, so is he ever going to feel that? Can he lose weight because of these powers? Maybe that's a thing. Like, he's scared he's going to be like made fun of like this forever and not grow into his own. But instead, a lot of toilet humor. And there was only one funny bit. I mean, it was when he got mad at Tim Allen and inflated in that tiny room. And Tim Allen was like pressed up against the window. And he's like, exactly what part of him is this? And I was like, okay, that's pretty funny.
Yeah. The other thing too is that, again, we're turning this into a family-friendly film. You have the ability to take a character like Tucker and actually downplay kids who may be a tad on the obese side.
Yes. And
show that regardless of that, they can still be super. They can still be the hero, but instead, you're right. It's body part and fat jokes.
And they had another prime opportunity, and this is just me rewriting things. You're telling me you didn't have him go Giant Man at any point, even though the CGI was bad. You already you already showed your hand with how bad the CGI was, and you decided to inflate his head, which was like the most uncanny valley surreal moment of the movie. It looks awful. But at the end, you could have easily had that be his big shining moment. Like, something happens to the rest of the team, who's going to take out concussion, and he just inflates himself to like 5 stories tall. Same guy, just massive, like tournament, and that's your big final battle is a gigantic Mega Boy versus Concussion or something like that.
Well, even if you have Summer, telekinetically lift him up over Concussion while Concussion is being distracted, and then drop him down, expanding on and basically, crushing him down, and because of his size, he can absorb the concussion blast that come from Concussion. Until basically they're making him say uncle underneath this kid's butt. Like, even that would at least,
that's actually a perfect ending.
Yeah.
You've just written perfect, because that fits the family narrative. Like, we do this every time we do one of these episodes, Jason, we just end up writing a better movie.
Yeah. And that's the thing. You have the ability, and it should be the kids stopping Concussion, because otherwise, what the hell was Zoom training them for?
What's the point if it just ends up being Zoom, getting them in a vortex? All of them help, but just ever so slightly. Like it's a very, very small, it's like 80% Zoom, 20% the kids.
Yeah.
And especially Mega Boy. Like Mega Boy just gives them a swat. That's basically it.
Yeah. It's every superhero film, every superhero team film has to have that team up moment, right?
Yeah.
And the Avengers did this perfectly. That unstopping shot where they pan through all the different Avengers throughout New York. Like, brilliant scene.
Endgame too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The portal scene. Like,
this film needed that Avengers in New York scene, and it didn't happen. I'm not saying it needs to be a $200 million film with a budget. Like, no. You can do this on the budget you got. Just plot out the fight smart, because that's the thing too. And before we get to Ryan Newman as Cindy Collins, the big fight scene at the end when Concussion finally frickin' shows up.
Yep.
It feels like everyone did their parts on separate days.
It does. It doesn't feel like they're even in the same room together. Like it just feels so rushed at the end. It does not have any sense of flow once you get to the final battle. And I would love to sit down with somebody who was involved with the making of it and ask, was it because there was so much left over from that dark version that you just had to rewrite really quickly? Like, what were the major changes? Because you got to think this was not the ideal ending. That was the first draft of this. This could not have been what they had in mind at the beginning, because it is such a confusing ending to the movie where nothing gets tied up and you're left with more questions than answers. At the very least, at the end of a movie, you should be left with like some sense of finality to it. I was just like, wow, I did not realize how little of this makes sense when I was a kid.
Yeah. Ryan Newman, who played Cindy Collins, the princess of the group, her first actual live action film role. She did do some voice work in a film before that, but this is her first live action film. Your thoughts on her?
Every good part of this movie involved that girl. Every good scene in this movie, every funny scene in this movie, there was a 9 out of 10 chance that girl was in the room for it. For her age, I think she did fantastic. This is my favorite character in the movie. I think this is a ridiculously cool idea for a comic book superhero that isn't actually done very much. It's a kid who is totally aware that they're a monster and like super strong, and even uses that against the adults at several points. Like, she huffs a 2-ton concrete block at Tim Allen and them and scatter, like, and then they all like walk. Like, that's the best parts of the movie have her in it. I think that she saves some of the scenes that she's in. Even in the final battle, she had probably the biggest part of any of the kids. She had the big antenna bat because they were like trying to call back to them playing baseball for one montage as if it was like a super important scene in the movie at the final battle. And it took me a second to even realize what he meant by that. Let's play ball, and they all get in their spots. Like, it took me a minute to realize what was going on. But I think her character arc is also the best of all the kids, because they actually give her a bit of a emotional weight to it. Like, why did my parents send me here? Like, I keep getting told that I'm different. Is that a bad thing? Like, if Tim Allen or Zoom, is saying that we're not superheroes, but I'm still getting locked underground in a bunker, that must mean I'm bad, right? Like, is there something wrong with all this? Like, her arc is what the rest of the kids should have gotten as well. If everybody would have gotten kind of something like she did, this would be a much different movie.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, this is like, aside from Courtney Cox, Ryan Newman's character is the only one that really does their best to humanize
Saving
Zoom.
grace.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Kevin Zegers, who played Connor Shepard, Concussion, the bad guy of the film and Jack's brother. Your thoughts?
He didn't have enough time. You know, he didn't have enough time to really make much of a mark. He's Havoc from the X-Men, powers wise. If you're going to make a comic book comparison, he has shockwaves. I think the best CGI in the movie was done with his powers. I think they did a pretty good job when there was that little like scuffle toward the end between him and Zoom when it wasn't in the big final team up with all the kids. That looked really good. I think there's just a lot of unanswered questions with the character. Like I said, he is the crux of the ending not being good. Because, like I said, theoretically speaking, if we're going by what the movie establishes, he killed Tim Allen's girlfriend at the time, who was another member of the team, and Marksman, who was the leader of the team at the time, making everything split up because reasons. Somehow Palpatine returned. Somehow he got banished to essentially the Shadow Realm for 30 years, didn't age, and was still souped up and angry from the gamma radiation enough that when he came back, he was still angry. So there's just not enough to go on. The performance was all right, but the character is just everything wrong with the movie.
By the way, we keep mentioning the old team. There is actually one photo of the original Team Zenith. For the record, the actors who those are. So Ace, who was the I guess the girlfriend of Tim Allen at the time, that picture is Alexis Bledel. Davaria, who's another member of Zoom's team, that's Devin Aoki, and Marksman is actually Wilmer Valderrama. So you actually have a whole ton of star power in like one photo. In
a throwaway bit. That's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, they're look closely, look at it again. You'll be like, oh, okay, cool. Concussion is supposed to be the existential threat that they need to team up against. But for the most part, he's a freaking red line on a map, moving slower than most scooters at the assisted mobility shop. Because if he's the threat that they have to train for, if he's the reason why they're thinking about dosing these kids with all this gamma radiation, show it to me.
Yes.
Like, I understand you're on a limited budget for VFX and you're apparently blowing it all on the wrong parts because the parts where you need it aren't there. And there's the other thing too. If you focus on character development over these sight gags, then you save the budget for when you need it the most. Concussion's arrival falters after Zoom gets his speed back. Because then he's a wimp.
He's a pushover.
Point. Yeah,
exactly. He's a complete pushover. And realistically speaking, the kids could have easily dealt with him in their untrained state, I think.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's supposed to be the kids defeating them. But unfortunately, it's an everyone's happy ending. And I don't think you needed an everyone's happy ending. I mean, maybe you don't kill Zoom off. Okay, I get it. Family film. You don't want people going, oh, I really miss the Tool Time guy. No.
But someone should have at least gone to jail. Like, we should have at least seen somebody getting led away in handcuffs. I think what it would have added to a lot of Concussion's character. Because theoretically, if he's in like the Shadow Realm or a different dimension or wherever he is, you can't show him there. They don't have the budget for that. Show me a flashback. Yeah. Show me the day he broke. Show me the day they gamma bombed him and he broke out. Like, at least give me something just to give me a face that's not like a picture on the screen, like you said. I think it would have done a lot, even if you obviously can't show him killing the other two, but show him breaking out. Give us a fleeting dream flashback or something of him running through the hallway with the red eyes. And he turns around and he has a moment with young Zoom where he's like trying to convince him to stay or like stop what he's doing or something like that. Give us something to go off of, not just, oh yeah, he's my brother and he's coming.
Yeah. And the other thing too is yes, they did a decent exposition dump right off the bat with, panels from the government propaganda comic books. That's a great intro because you're dropping people into the middle of this world with zero point of reference. They start you off with the starter pack that you need, and it's done very, very well. But I think the thing is, if the bad guy's supposed to be the threat, show me he's the threat without just telling me he's bad.
Exactly. And going back to the beginning that you were talking about, I think it's one of the best openings for a comic book movie, period, for setting it up.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, like, as wild as it is to say about Zoom from 2006, 2020's Marvel could learn from that. We don't need 3 episodes to set up a universe. Like, you can give me what the information that I need in like a 5-minute opening. And these guys really did a good job on that for somebody who reads a bunch of different expanded universes. Sometimes they try too much to fill you in on everything and take way too much time. This did a great job of just, okay, here's the basics. Here's the old team. Here's what happened. Here's where we're at right now. Okay, go. You know enough. You'll get by. Like, I love that. I love that kind of storytelling where it treats you like you actually know something.
And it bookends well, because then you get the new Team Zenith comic book at the end. Like,
yeah,
that part was smart plotting, but there's a lot in the middle that needs to be reworked and flushed out, and get rid of the sight gags, because if you don't care about the characters, then no matter what you put into this film, people aren't going to get behind the film. We need to connect to the people that we see.
And we need to see them change. We need to have, like I said earlier, at the end of the movie, you want to feel like you're not looking at the same person you were looking at the beginning, especially in a story like this, where it's supposed to be about people getting trained to fight Doomsday, basically. And you don't get it there's 2 characters that have significant growth, basically, throughout the entire thing. And they're not the characters that you really need this movie to have the movement with. They're the little girl and they're Courtney Cox's character, basically, are the 2 that get the most point A to point B character development. And, not Zoom, not the leader of the team, not the main villain, who, again, doesn't get anything, basically. He's just like, all right, we're cool, let's go. It's so strange the way everybody ends up at the end, almost exactly the same they were at the beginning.
All right. Well, we've gotten to the end of the show, which means it is time. So, Lyle, who is your MVP of 2006's Zoom?
This is going to be a slightly controversial pick, I think, because of how much star power is in it. But my MVP is Ryan Whitney. My MVP is the girl, the little girl. That's who's the number one for me. Cindy Collins is the best part of this movie. I think the little girl is the only person that gave Zoom a shred of humanity through the entire thing and kept him from being a caricature and sticking with that, like I said, Tim Allen character. But she also had the coolest power set, had the funniest moments. They used her superpowers. The fact that it is a little girl just using ridiculous levels of super strength to get what she wants is really funny in a lot of the instances, especially when she's working with like Chevy Chase and stuff like that. She was the best part of this movie. And she was probably my least favorite part when I was a kid. I vividly remember Zoom being super cool to me when I was 11 years old when this came out. So to go back now and having my favorite character basically the exact opposite is really funny, but I definitely enjoyed her the most.
For me, yes, I will give you that. Ryan Newman / Ryan Whitney. Yes, her stage name now is Ryan Whitney. She was credited as Ryan Newman in this film.
Interesting.
Yes, her full name is actually Ryan Whitney Newman. So he just goes by Ryan Whitney now.
Levels and levels.
Exactly. Plus, hey, education, we're good. I'm going to stick with Courtney Cox in this because I think she fit the perfect tonality of this. I had to stop myself from wanting to drop a reference, so I'll put it here now. I just find it funny that in this film, Kate Mara falls for the guy who turns invisible and then becomes Sue Storm in Fantastic as the Invisible Girl. I'm just saying. But yeah, no, Courtney Cox got the point of this film.
Yes.
At first, I was like, wow, Courtney Cox is really happy in this. And then you realize that that's exactly the character that they need because she doesn't know about concussion. She doesn't know about the actual government plot. She's there because she cares about the kids. And you need that kind of character for this.
Yeah, because she's basically the only one in the movie that does like really actually give a crap about the kids. And she is like, without giving too much away, she is a full member of the team by the end of the movie. And like it's set out pretty early. Like you can see it pretty early on because she is one of the best parts of the movie. Like without her and without the girl, or without either one of them, both of them have to help prop this whole thing up, because if there was just one of them, it would take a lot away from it. So I think both of our picks are the most important parts of this movie, of all the moving parts.
I will say, and I'm going to get to this in a second here with you, but if you are doing a remake of this film today, Melissa Fumero from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, who played Amy Santiago, would be perfect in that role. So now that we're here, because Disney Plus, of course, is always looking for things to redo or remake, can you see a remake of Zoom happen, and should it?
Yes, but do the dark version.
Interesting. But then does it still remain a family-friendly film?
I think you make it like either the hardest PG you can go, or you make it PG-13.
I could see a PG-13.
I think PG-13.
Yeah, take out the sight gags, take out the fart humor, develop the characters, maybe go find that original version of the script. We work it a little bit because, of course, you can play with things a little bit more. Maybe it's a series. Maybe it's the kind of thing where you need to flush it out and go over like a 6-episode miniseries on streaming.
Because the most crucial part of why you would have to take more time is you would have to get a lot more stakes for the kids, which means you would have to use like the obvious like social and mental health issues you would get from getting superpowers in today's day and age, because you'd have to set it in modern times too. So it would be maybe impossible for a kid to develop powers without people knowing really quick, because someone takes a video of them, or you end up all over Twitter and you don't want to be like, you know what I mean? So you would have to really flesh out how hard it is on them to be in the situation. Yeah. And if you're going to go the dark route, because that's the whole thing. That was the issues they touched on that were really cool, but you didn't get enough of it. So,
I mean, a lot of those young superhero type films and TV shows are really just analogies for puberty and entering, late teenagehood. So, I mean, you can go down that road and kind of play on those analogies. You can also allow the series to be able to deal with certain issues like, being ostracized as a young kid for being too good or too smart or too big in the case of Mega Boy, and having that. Yeah. You can take those lessons and flush them out in a series and turn it into a really beneficial show. I honestly think this could be remade, and it could be made better, and people will sit there and say they were so close in 2006.
Yeah.
But now they can cross the finish line.
And unfortunately, keep Tim Allen very far away from it if you're going to remake it as well.
Yes, absolutely and absolutely. Lyle, thank you so much for this. Now, please remind our listeners where out there on the interwebs they can find you.
Well, actually, for the last couple of months, I have been the full content producer on Let's Talk with Danny Stover, specifically on AM 640. So look her up, iHeartRadio app. There's plenty of ways you can find us, even in podcast form. Look up Let's Talk with Danny Stover. You'll hear my voice a lot, too, if you're not sick of it, me gushing over superheroes yet, but you're tuning into this show, so you must not be sick of it yet. So, AM 640, Let's Talk with Danny Stover.
All right, Lyle. Dude, whether it's here or whether it's on there, can only be one. There is always a place for you on the mic, no matter what.
Oh, I'll be back. I'll always be back. I'm a glutton for punishment.
Oh, don't worry. There's enough movies out there. We can toss punishment your way.
Yep. You just pitched me something that I'm not looking forward to, but here we sit.
All right. And to you, our listeners, you guys know the drill. If there is a movie out there that you think is unfairly maligned, or there is no way in a mountain hideaway that we can find anything good to say about it, hit us up on social media at Not That Badcast, or go to our website at notthatbadcast.com. And while you're there, make sure you check out all of our other shows and our coming soon page so you can get your shout outs in. Until next time, he's Lyle. I'm Jay. You guys are awesome. This is It's Not That Bad, a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. Take care.